I always thought my life with Clara was a masterpiece, a canvas painted with trust and quiet joys. We'd been married 12 years, living in a modest house on the edge of town, where the trees whispered secrets to the wind. I'm Daniel, a man of routine, up at dawn to tinker in my workshop, crafting furniture that smelled of pine and promise. Clara was my muse, her laughter the rhythm to my days. She worked at the library, surrounded by books that held worlds I'd never explore, and I loved her for it. Our life wasn't loud or flashy, but it was ours, or so I believed. Started with a splinter, not in my hand but in my mind. A Tuesday in late autumn, the air crisp and golden, when I noticed her phone buzzing more than usual. She'd left it on the kitchen counter while she showered, and I, curious as a child, glanced at it. A name flashed, Elliot. No last name, just Elliot. A text followed, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was nothing. A coworker, a friend, a harmless thread in the fabric of her life. I didn't mention it. I didn't want to seem small. The next day, she said she had a late shift at the library. I nodded, kissed her forehead, and watched her leave in her gray coat, her auburn hair catching the last light. But something gnawed at me, a quiet beast I couldn't name. I drove to the library that evening, my truck rumbling through the dusk, just to surprise her with coffee. The parking lot was nearly empty, and her car wasn't there. The library closed at 6, not 9 like she'd said. I sat there, engine idling, the coffee cooling in my hands, and felt the first crack in my world. I didn't confront her that night. She came home at 10, smelling of lavender and something sharper, like metal or musk. She smiled, kissed me, and said the shift had been exhausting. I nodded, my tongue heavy, my mind spinning. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own life. Her phone stayed glued to her now, but I noticed other things. Lipstick on a collar she'd forgotten to wash, a receipt for a cafe I'd never been to, a lightness in her step that didn't match our quiet evenings. I wasn't a fool. I knew something was unraveling, but I didn't know how deep the thread went. Elliot. The name haunted me like a shadow I couldn't shake. I started digging, not with accusations but with quiet steps. I'd always been good with my hands, fixing things, building things, so I turned that skill inward. I checked her car's mileage, too many miles for her usual routes. I found a library schedule online. No late shifts matched her excuses. Each clue was a pebble in my shoe, small but impossible to ignore. I didn't want to believe it, but belief was slipping through my fingers like sand. One evening, I followed her. She said she was meeting a friend for book club, a lie so smooth I almost swallowed it. I trailed her in my truck, keeping my distance, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. She didn't go to the community center. She drove to a house on the edge of town, a sleek modern place with glass windows and a manicured lawn. Nothing like our weathered home. I parked down the street, lights off, and watched her step out, her coat swaying as she walked to the door. A man opened it, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a smile that cut me from a distance. Elliot, I knew it in my bones. They didn't linger outside. She stepped in, the door closed, and I sat there, frozen, the night pressing against my windshield. I didn't storm in. I didn't honk or scream. I just watched, my breath fogging the glass, my mind painting pictures I couldn't unsee. An hour passed, then 2. When she emerged, her hair was mussed, her cheeks flushed, and he stood in the doorway, watching her go. I drove home before she did, my hands trembling on the wheel, my world tilting off its axis. That night, she slid into bed beside me, her warmth a lie against my skin. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our life together. How long had this been happening? How many times had she smiled at me while carrying him in her thoughts? I wasn't angry yet, not fully. It was a slow burn, an ember glowing beneath the surface, waiting for fuel. I needed proof, not just for her betrayal, but for what I'd do next. I wasn't a man of rash moves, but I was a man who fixed things. And this I'd fix in my own way. The next morning I acted normal. Coffee brewed, toast buttered, a kiss on her cheek as she left for work. But inside, I was a storm gathering strength. I called in sick to my carpentry clients, something I never did, and set to work. I needed to know more about Elliot, this phantom who'd slipped into my life. I started with the house. A quick search online. Public records are a goldmine if you know where to look. Told me it belonged to Elliot Grayson, a real estate developer with a slick website and a face that matched the man at the door. Wealthy, polished, everything I wasn't. I drove back to his place that afternoon, parking a block away. His car was gone, the house quiet. I didn't break in. I'm not that man, but I walked the perimeter, peering through windows like a ghost. The living room was pristine, all glass and leather, but in the back, near the patio, I saw something that stopped me cold. A scarf, Clara's scarf, the blue one with tiny embroidered stars. I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary. It hung over a chair, casual, like it belonged there. My chest tightened, but I kept moving, memorizing the layout, the exits, the life she'd built without me. Back home, I turned to her things. She was at the library, her real shift this time. I checked, so I had hours. Her laptop sat on the desk, password protected, but I knew her better than she thought. Her mother's maiden name and our wedding year unlocked it. Emails, photos, a hidden folder labeled work. Inside, messages to Elliot, dozens of them, stretching back months. Miss you already, she wrote. Last night was everything, he replied. Pictures too, her in his house, laughing, her hair spilling over his shoulder. My hands shook as I scrolled, each word a blade, each image a wound. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I copied the folder to a drive, wiped my tracks, and closed the laptop. The ember was afire now, steady and hot. I knew what she'd done, how she'd woven this other life, but I didn't know why. That night, she came home, humming, and I smiled at her, my mask perfect. Good day, I asked. The best, she said, and I nodded, letting her words fuel me. Revenge wasn't a shout or a fist. It was a plan, and I was building it piece by careful piece. Days passed, and I lived two lives. One was the husband she knew, quiet, steady, sanding wood in the workshop while she read her novels. The other was the man she'd awakened, the one who watched her every move, who saw the lies in her glances. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted her to feel safe, to keep spinning her web while I spun mine. Elliot Grayson became my obsession. I learned his routines, morning jogs, late nights at his office downtown, weekends at that glass house. I learned his tastes, his habits, the way he carried himself like the world owed him everything. Clara's betrayal wasn't standard, and neither would my response be. I started small, testing the waters. One night, she left her phone unlocked while she bathed. I forwarded a few of her messages with Elliot to my own device, then deleted the evidence. You make me feel alive, she'd written. You're my escape, he'd replied. Escape from what? From me? From our life? I didn't ask her. Instead, I began to plant seeds. I mentioned a new project at work, a big order that'd keep me busy, giving her more freedom to slip away. She took the bait, her late shifts increasing, her excuses polished like glass. I visited Elliot's office next, a gleaming tower in the city. I didn't go inside, just watched from across the street, sipping coffee, noting who came and went. His assistant, a sharp-eyed woman with a clipboard, seemed to run his life. His clients, all suits and briefcases, oozed money. I wasn't jealous of his wealth. I was furious at his audacity. He'd taken something mine, not with force but with charm, and Clara had let him. That night, I sketched my first real move. Not a confrontation, but a fracture. I'd make them break themselves. The plan came to me in the workshop, surrounded by sawdust and tools. I'd always been good at building traps, literal ones for mice, figurative ones for clients who haggled too hard. This would be bigger. I called an old friend, Marcus, a man who owed me a favor from years back. He worked in tech, the kind of guy who could dig into systems without leaving a trace. I need something discreet, I told him over beers. Emails, accounts, whatever you can find on a guy named Elliot Grayson. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't ask why. "Give me a week," he said. I nodded, the fire in me growing, patient but relentless. Marcus delivered faster than I expected. For days later, he slid a USB drive across the table at a diner, his face unreadable. "You sure about this, Dan?" he asked. I didn't answer, just pocketed the drive and thanked him. Back home with Clara at book club, I plugged it in. Files spilled across my screen. Elliot's financials, his emails, his secrets. He wasn't just a developer. He was a gambler, juggling debts and deals, his polished life a house of cards. And there, buried in the mess, more messages with Clara. Plans to meet, whispers of a future. Her words like knives. "Daniel's so predictable. You're my chaos." Predictable. The word stung, but it lit the fuse. I didn't want chaos, I wanted ruin, slow and deliberate. I started with Elliot's world. Using a burner phone, I sent anonymous tips to his creditors, hinting at his cash flow problems. I leaked snippets of his shadier deals to a local blogger who loved a scandal. Nothing traced back to me. I was a ghost, nudging his life toward collapse. The first domino fell when his assistant quit. Marcus had found her job applications elsewhere, and I'd whispered to a friend in HR at a rival firm to poach her. Elliot's schedule unraveled without her. Clara noticed nothing at first. She came home glowing, oblivious to the storm I was brewing. But I saw cracks. Her phone buzzed less, her smiles tightened. Elliot was distracted, I guessed, as his empire wobbled. I didn't stop there. I crafted a letter, forged in his style from the emails I'd read, and sent it to her from a dummy account. "I need space," it said. "This isn't working." I watched her read it that night, her face paling, her fingers trembling. She didn't tell me, didn't cry, just sat there, silent, while I pretended to sand a table leg in the next room. The cruelty was in the quiet. I wasn't done. Not with her, not with him. I'd dismantle their affair, their lives, piece by piece, until they had nothing left to hold. My workshop became my war room, tools of wood and steel now tools of vengeance. Clara slept beside me, unaware, while I lay awake, plotting the next move. The fire was ablaze now, and I'd let it burn them both to ash. Clara's silence grew heavier after that forged letter. She moved through our house like a shadow, her eyes distant, her laughter gone. I kept my mask on, asked about her day, offered tea, sanded my furniture as if nothing had changed. But I saw the fracture in her, the way she checked her phone obsessively, waiting for Elliot to undo the words I'd planted. He didn't, of course. I'd made sure of that. His life was spiraling, and I was the unseen hand turning the wheel. Marcus's files had given me more than dirt. They'd given me leverage. Elliot's debts weren't just numbers. They were tied to people who didn't forgive. I made calls from a payphone across town, my voice low, my words vague but pointed. "Grayson's slipping," I'd say to a gruff voice on the other end. "Check his books." I didn't know who they were, loan sharks, investors, it didn't matter. They'd sniff out the blood I'd spilled in the water. Within days, I saw the signs. His car gone from the office lot, a for sale sign creeping up in front of that glass house. He was scrambling, and I was just getting started. Clara felt it too, though she didn't know why. She came home one night, her coat damp from rain, her face tight. "Rough day?" I asked, stirring soup on the stove. She nodded, barely meeting my eyes. "Just tired," she mumbled, but I saw the lie. I checked her car earlier. Mud on the tires, the kind you'd find near Elliot's place, not the library. She'd gone to him, probably begged for answers, and found chaos instead of comfort. I smiled into the steam, ladling her a bowl, my kindness a blade she didn't see. That night, I upped the stakes. I'd kept a photo from her laptop, her and Elliot on his patio, her head on his chest, the scarf I'd given her draped over the railing. I printed it, slipped it into an envelope, and mailed it to his office with no return address. Let him wonder who knew, let paranoia chew at him. I imagined him opening it, his polished facade cracking as he realized someone was watching. Clara would feel the ripple soon enough. My revenge wasn't loud. It was a whisper, growing into a scream they couldn't escape. The unraveling quickened. Elliot's name popped up in the local paper. Not a headline, just a blurb about a stalled development project. Creditors circling. I read it over coffee, Clara still asleep upstairs, and felt a quiet thrill. She woke late that morning, her eyes red, her voice brittle. "I might take a day off," she said, clutching her mug. "You okay?" I asked, all concern, no edge. She nodded, but her hands shook. I didn't push. I didn't need to. The trap was tightening, and she was caught without knowing it. I drove to the city that afternoon, parked near Elliot's office again. He was there, pacing behind glass walls, phone to his ear, his tie loose. A man on the edge. I didn't feel sorry for him. He'd taken my wife, not with force but with promises, and now he'd pay with everything he had. I'd learned from Marcus's files that he owned a cabin up north, a retreat he'd bragged about to Clara in their messages. Our little hideaway, he'd called it. I found it on a map, a dot in the woods, and filed it away. It'd be useful soon. Back home, Clara was on the couch, staring at nothing. I sat beside her, casual, and asked about her scarf, the blue one with stars. "Haven't seen it in a while," I said, watching her face. She froze, then shrugged. "Must have lost it," she muttered. I nodded, letting the lie hang between us. That night, I sent another email from the dummy account, this time to her, in Elliot's voice. "I can't do this anymore. It's over." I watched from the workshop as she read it, her breath hitching, her fingers digging into the cushion. She didn't cry, not yet, but I knew the dam was cracking. I wasn't done with Elliot. I'd found a client of his, a woman named Helen who'd lost money on one of his deals. A quick call from the payphone, a nudge about his troubles, and she was furious enough to sue. Another crack in his foundation. I pictured him sleepless, cornered, while Clara sat in our living room, unraveling in her own way. My hands stayed steady, shaping wood, shaping their ruin. The fire in me burned cold now, precise, a craftsman's flame. Clara broke first. It was a Friday, the sky gray and heavy. When she came to me in the kitchen, her voice small. "Daniel, we need to talk." I turned, wiping my hands on a towel, my face open, waiting. She didn't meet my eyes. "I've been distant," she said. "I'm sorry." It wasn't a confession. Not fully, just a thread she hoped I'd pull. I didn't. "You've been busy," I said, neutral, giving her nothing. She nodded, biting her lip, and retreated. I let her stew, knowing the truth was a weight she couldn't carry much longer. Elliot's world was crumbling faster now. The lawsuit hit the news, Helen's name in bold, his in shame. His office phone went to voicemail, his website offline. I drove by his house again. The for sale sign was joined by a moving truck, half-packed boxes spilling onto the lawn. He was running or trying to. I wouldn't let him. I mailed another photo, this one to his ex-wife, a woman I'd found in Marcus's files, bitter from their divorce. Clara's face in the frame would stir that pot nicely. Let him explain that. Clara's phone stopped buzzing altogether. She paced our house, restless, her excuses thinning. "I might visit my sister," she said one night, testing me. "Sure," I replied, sanding a chair, my tone light. She didn't go. She couldn't. Not with Elliot silent. Not with her life fraying. I saw the guilt in her now, the fear, and I fed it. I left the workshop door open. Let her hear me whistle tunes she'd once loved. Let her wonder why I wasn't breaking. She didn't know I'd already broken, months ago, and rebuilt myself into this. That night, I dreamed of the cabin, Elliot's hideaway. It wasn't just a place. It was a symbol, their secret stitched into its walls. I woke with a plan, the cruelest yet. I'd take it from them, not with fire or force, but with precision. I called Marcus again. "One more favor," I said. "Find me a buyer for a cabin up north." He didn't ask questions. I smiled into the dark, the pieces falling into place. My revenge a symphony nearing its crescendo. Clara's confession came on a Sunday, rain tapping the windows like a drum roll. She sat me down, her hands twisting in her lap, her voice trembling. "I've been seeing someone," she said. the words spilling out like water from a cracked vase. His name's Elliot. It's over now, but I need you to know. She looked at me, expecting anger, tears, something. I gave her nothing. Okay, I said, my voice flat, my eyes steady. Why? She asked, confused. Why aren't you mad? I shrugged. What's done is done. She stared, lost, and I let her drown in it. I didn't tell her I'd known for months, that I'd orchestrated Elliot's fall, that her over was my design. She thought she'd ended it, thought she'd reclaimed control. She hadn't. That night, she cried in the bedroom, muffled sobs I didn't comfort. I sat in the workshop, planning the cabin's fate. Marcus had found a buyer, a hunter, cash in hand, eager for a retreat. I fed him the details, kept my name out of it, and watched the sale close through a shell account. Elliot wouldn't know until he tried to flee there, finding strangers in his sanctuary. His collapse was public now. The paper ran a follow-up, local developer faces bankruptcy. I left it on the table for Clara to see, her gasp a quiet victory. She didn't connect it to me. She couldn't. I was just Daniel, the predictable husband, sanding wood while her world burned. But I saw the toll on her. Pale skin, restless nights, the glow she'd carried with Elliot gone. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My revenge was in the silence, the way she looked at me now, searching for the man she'd betrayed. Elliot called her once, a desperate voicemail I heard through the wall. Clara, I'm losing everything. Help me. She didn't call back. I'd made sure he had no one to turn to. His ex-wife raging, his creditors closing in, his cabin sold. I pictured him alone, that broad-shouldered frame shrinking, and felt the fire in me settle into something colder, sharper. Clara was next. Her punishment wouldn't be quick. It'd be a slow unraveling, a mirror to what she'd done to me. Clara tried to rebuild us, or at least the illusion of us. She cooked dinners, lingered near me in the workshop, asked about my day with a forced brightness. I played along, my responses short, my smiles thin. She didn't know I was past forgiveness, that every gesture she made was a nail in her own coffin. I'd taken Elliot's life apart. Now I'd take hers, not with shouts or scenes, but with the quiet cruelty of indifference. She'd feel the weight of her choices, and I'd make sure it crushed her. Elliot vanished from the grid soon after. Marcus tracked him, evicted from his house, car repossessed, last seen at a cheap motel on the highway. I didn't care where he went, only that he was gone, a ghost of the man who'd stolen my wife's heart. I sent one last gift, a package to the motel, no return address, containing her scarf and a note in her handwriting, copied from her emails. You're my chaos. Let him choke on that memory. Clara never knew, never asked about the scarf again. It was gone, like her lover, like the life she'd chased. At home, I shifted the game. I started leaving late nights at the workshop, weekends away on jobs that didn't exist. I'd drive to the woods, sit by the cabin I'd sold, and breathe the air of my victory. Clara called, her voice small, asking when I'd be back. Soon, I'd say vague, letting her wonder. She'd wait up. I knew, her guilt a leash I tugged without touching. One night, I left a photo on the counter. Not of her and Elliot, but of us years ago smiling at a fair. Found this, I said when she saw it. Her eyes welled up, but I walked away, leaving her with the past she'd shattered. The cruelty deepened. I hired a woman, Lydia, a friend of Marcus's, to call our house, her voice warm, asking for me. Wrong number. I'd say if Clara was near, but I'd linger on the line when she wasn't, planting seeds of doubt. Clara noticed, her questions sharp. Who was that? I'd shrug. No idea. She'd search my face, finding nothing, and I'd watch her unravel, her own betrayal mirrored back. My revenge was a sculpture now, carved with care, and I was far from finished. Clara's unraveling became a quiet spectacle, one I watched with the patience of a craftsman. She clung to me now, her touches hesitant, her words laced with a need I no longer answered. I turned our home into a stage, And she was the actor who didn't know the script had changed. Lydia's calls kept coming, random, warm. A voice Clara couldn't place but couldn't ignore. "Who is she?" she asked one night, her tone sharp, her eyes wild. I looked up from my newspaper, calm as stone. "No one," I said, and went back to reading. She stood there, trembling, the irony of her jealousy a blade I twisted without moving. Elliot was a memory now, a shadow I'd erased from her life and mine. Marcus sent me a final update. He'd left town, broke and broken, last seen hitchhiking south. I didn't care where he landed, only that he'd lost everything, including her. Clara didn't mention him anymore, but I saw his ghost in her silences, her restless pacing. She thought I didn't know, thought her confession had cleansed her. She was wrong. I knew every thread of her betrayal, and I was weaving them into a noose she'd hang herself with. I started leaving traces, subtle, deliberate. A receipt for a dinner I hadn't eaten with her, tucked in my coat pocket where she'd find it. A faint whiff of perfume, Lydia's, borrowed for the purpose, on my shirt when I came home late. I didn't explain, didn't flinch when she asked. "Where were you?" she'd say, her voice cracking. "Out," I'd reply, sanding a table leg, my back to her. She'd search my face, my things, finding nothing solid but enough to drive her mad. I'd learned that from her, how to plant doubt, how to let it fester. One evening I took it further. I packed a bag, small but visible, and left it by the door. "Going somewhere?" she asked, her hands twisting together. "Maybe," I said, casual, watching her panic bloom. I didn't leave, not yet, but I let her think I might. She cooked my favorite meal that night, her hands shaking as she served it, her eyes begging me to stay. I ate in silence, thanked her, and went to the workshop. She followed, hovering, but I shut the door. The lock clicked, and I heard her sob through the wood. My fire was ice now, precise and unyielding. The game grew darker, more deliberate. I stopped sleeping beside her, not with words but with actions. I'd stay in the workshop late, a blanket on the cot I'd built, my absence a weight she couldn't lift. She'd knock sometimes, her voice soft through the door. "Daniel, please come to bed." I'd wait, silent, until she gave up. When I did sleep in our room, I turned away, my back a wall she couldn't breach. She'd reach for me in the night, her fingers brushing my shoulder, and I'd lie still, letting her feel the void she'd created. Lydia became my shadow puppet. I met her once, in a diner far from town, to plan the next move. She was sharp, amused by my scheme, and willing to play along. "You're a quiet storm, aren't you?" she said, sipping coffee. I didn't smile, just handed her a script. She called Clara directly the next day, her voice bright, asking for me. Clara answered, stunned, and I heard it from the kitchen, her sharp, "Who is this?" followed by Lydia's laugh and a hang-up. Clara stormed in, phone in hand. "Who's that woman?" she demanded. I shrugged. "Don't know her." She threw the phone down, tears spilling, and I turned back to my coffee. Her world shrank. She stopped going to the library, her excuses flimsy. Sick days, headaches, anything to stay near me. I let her, my presence a punishment. I'd hum tunes from our early years, watch her flinch at the memories, and leave her with them. One night, she found the photo I'd left, the fair, us smiling, and clutched it, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I nodded, said nothing, and walked away. She didn't know I'd sold the cabin, didn't know Elliot was gone, didn't know I'd orchestrated it all. She thought she'd lost me to another woman, and I let her believe it. Her own betrayal reflected back in cruel, perfect clarity. I planned the final act. The cabin buyer, the hunter, had sent me photos. Unprompted, proud of his new retreat. Clara's scarf hung on a wall, a trophy he didn't understand. I kept one picture, a seed for the end. My revenge wasn't over. It was ripening, a fruit she'd taste soon enough. I sanded wood, my hands steady, my mind a blade honed to its sharpest edge. Clara's desperation clawed at her now, a wild thing I'd caged without touching. She followed me around the house, her questions a litany. "Where are you going?" Who are you seeing? Why won't you talk to me? I gave her scraps. Half answers, shrugs, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. She'd lost her glow, her auburn hair dull, her face hollow. I didn't pity her. She'd chosen this, chosen him, and I was the mirror showing her what she'd become. The workshop became my fortress, the hum of my tools drowning her pleas. Lydia's calls stopped. I didn't need them anymore. Clara's imagination did the work, painting pictures of a life I wasn't living. I fed it with absences, coming home late with sawdust on my sleeves, my silence a wall she couldn't climb. One night, she waited up, her eyes red, a bottle of wine half empty on the table. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice raw. "Are you leaving me?" I looked at her, long and steady. "I'm here, aren't I?" I said, and went to bed. She didn't follow, and I heard her cry through the walls, a sound I'd once have run to fix. Not now. I mailed the cabin photo to her, no note, just the image, her scarf on that stranger's wall, a relic of her other life. It arrived on a Tuesday, and I watched her open it, her hands shaking as she stared. "Where did this come from?" she whispered, turning to me. I shrugged, sanding a chair, my face blank. She didn't ask again, but I saw the realization creep in. Elliot's hideaway gone, her secrets exposed. She didn't know how I knew, didn't know I'd sold it, but she felt the noose tighten. I left her with that, her guilt a weight I'd hung myself. The end was near. I packed a real bag this time, not to leave but to push her over the edge. I left it by the door again, let her see it, let her beg. "Don't go," she said, grabbing my arm. I pulled away, gentle but firm. "I need space," I said, the first truth I'd given her in months. She sank to the floor, sobbing, and I stepped over her, out into the night. I drove to the woods, sat by the cabin's new owners, and breathed. She'd break soon, and I'd be there to watch, my revenge a quiet, crushing thing. Clara shattered the next day. I came home to find her on the couch, the photo in her lap, her eyes empty. She didn't look at me, didn't speak, just sat there, a shell of the woman I'd loved. I made coffee, moved around her like she was furniture, my indifference a final blow. She'd stopped fighting, stopped asking, stopped pretending. The house was silent, the air thick with her defeat, and I let it settle, a craftsman admiring his work. She'd lost Elliot, lost me, lost herself, and I'd guided her there, step by cruel step. I didn't stay long. I took my bag, still packed, and left again, this time for a motel in town. Not to escape, but to let her stew in the void. I called Marcus from there, thanked him for his help, and burned the USB drive in a trash can. Its ashes the last of Elliot's secrets. Clara called once, her voice a whisper, "Come home." I didn't answer, didn't need to. She'd feel my absence like a wound, and that was enough. I slept soundly, the first time in months, my fire cooled to embers, my plan near its end. When I returned 2 days later, she was gone. Not far, just to her sisters. A note said, scribbled on the counter, "I need time." I smiled, folding it into my pocket. She thought she'd chosen this, thought she'd escaped. She hadn't. I'd driven her there, her guilt and doubt a leash I'd pulled tight. I cleaned the house, sanded a new table, and waited. She'd come back. She always did, and I'd be ready, my final act a quiet, devastating stroke. The town buzzed with Elliot's fall, whispers of his ruin reaching me like music. Clara's name stayed out of it, but I knew she heard, knew she felt the weight. I visited the library, her old haunt, and left a book on the counter. A romance novel she'd loved, its pages marked with her own betrayal. The librarian promised to give it to her, and I walked away, the trap set. She'd see it, remember, and know there was no hiding from what she'd done. My revenge was a circle, closing slow and sure. Clara returned a week later, her face gaunt, her voice small. "Can we try again?" she asked, standing in the doorway, her bag at her feet. I looked at her, the woman I'd built my life with, the woman who'd torn it apart, and nodded. "Sure," I said, my tone even, my eyes cold. She stepped inside, tentative, and I let her settle, let her think the storm had passed. It hadn't. I'd saved the cruelest cut for last, a finale she'd never see coming. I kept her close, but distant. We ate together, slept in the same bed, but I touched her like she was glass, fragile, untouchable. She tried to bridge the gap, her hands seeking mine, her words soft with regret. I gave her nothing, my silence a wall she couldn't scale. The book from the library sat on her nightstand, unopened, a silent taunt. She'd look at it, then at me, and I'd smile, small and sharp, letting her wonder. She didn't ask about Lydia, didn't mention Elliot, but I saw them in her eyes, ghosts I'd summoned and left to haunt her. The final blow came quietly. I'd kept one last photo, not of her and Elliot, but of us, the day we'd bought this house, her smile bright, my arm around her. I framed it, hung it in the living room, and waited. She saw it that night, froze, her breath catching. "Why this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "To remember," I said, simple, and walked away. She stared at it, hours passing, and I heard her cry, deep, wrenching sobs that shook the walls. I didn't comfort her. I'd given her the past, pristine and untouchable, a mirror to what she'd destroyed. She stayed, but she was gone. She moved through our days like a specter, her spirit crushed, her betrayal a weight I'd carved into her soul. I lived on, sanding wood, building furniture, my life steady while hers crumbled. Elliot was a footnote, his ruin complete, but Clara's was my masterpiece. Slow, silent, a revenge so cruel it needed no shout, no scene. She'd live with it, with me, forever trapped in the life she'd betrayed, and I'd watch, the husband she'd never truly know again, my fire finally at rest.